house and waiting for everyone to catch up with me. Waiting for everyone to catch up. So, all right. Oh, PopPop is live. Uh, uh, so, all right. Hacker Tracker is active. That's my AI powered. That's my AI powered monitor, whatever you call it, moderator. So, yeah. So I got in touch with my executor that the good Lord has sent me. And have begun to make arrangements for my cremation. So it's odd. It's odd that when you get older, you're making arrangements for your bodily disposal. You know, pardon my flesh. I don't want to leave it around for somebody to trip over it, you know. I always joked that as long as there was a dumpster outside, I was good to go, being as I work for garbage companies. But yeah. And I've always been on the outs with my family. I've always been the black sheep of the family. And so what's up, Azim? Azim is in the house. All right, Azim is in the house. I feel so much better that Azim is in the house. Azim said hi. All right. Thank you, Azim. So when you get my age, you have to make arrangements for the disposal of your body so that you don't leave it around to have somebody trip over it or something like that. So Azim is going to say hi 3 times because Azim is worried that we won't say hi back to Azim. Please, everybody, say hi to Azim so that Azim can relax. Everyone say hi to Azim. Azim has said hi again. Wow, Azim is good at saying hi. So, all right. See, when you type something 54,212 times into the comments and you hog the comments, the automatic hacker tracker deletes that because you're hogging the comments when somebody else could say hi. So Azim has said hi like 42,617 times so far because they're worried that nobody's going to say hi back. All right. So, in any case, I got in touch with my newfound executor, bless God, and have begun to make the arrangements for my final arrangements. I prayed and asked God if I was going to go in the rapture or go by way of the grave. From him, by the way, over this. He's asked so many miracles for me lately. So don't get me wrong about that. But in any case, I made a very strong prayer with God, not one that you take lightly. I said, Lord, I'm all for going in the rapture. I would like to once in my life be included with a group, with a good thing. But if not, if it means more people coming to Christ, I will be satisfied with going to heaven by way of the grave. Okay? That's not something you pray lightly. All right? So, for those of you, G. Koch is in the house. G. Koch is in the house. So, I always think of Mayor Ed Koch when I see that name. So, in any case, to give you all some history, my father was very badly abused. Annalise McCarthy is in the house. My father was very badly abused when he was a child. He was left out. His father abandoned him in the middle of a bridge. Get us, it's like 1913, 1914. And my grandfather left my father and my grandmother in the middle of a bridge and drove off in his Ford Model T at a blazing 4 miles an hour. Can you imagine? You leave somebody on a bridge and then you're going to make your getaway in a 1908, because it wasn't new. It was like a 1908 Ford Model T that has a top speed of like 4 miles an hour. And your wife is running after you with the little baby. Wait, Cock, wait, don't leave us. And you got the throttle wide open on the Model T, and the wind is at your back, and you're going along. Bucket chuck. Model Ts used to make this funny noise. Bucket chucka, bucket chucka, bucket chucka, bucket chucka, bucket chucka, bucket chucka, bucket chucka. So my grandmother was on the bridge yelling for my grandfather not to abandon her and my father. And so my grandfather is driving away at a blazing 4 miles an hour or 5 miles an hour in this Model T. Bucket chucka, bucket chucka, bucket chucka, bucket chucka. So it must have taken like literally a half hour. It must have, okay, so Annalise is going to bed. Goodbye, Annalise. Pip, pip, cheerio, and all of that other stuff. So in any case, it must have taken like a half hour for my grandfather to abandon my grandmother and my father on the bridge, blasting away in the Model T at 4 miles an hour. You know, that must have been a very long getaway. But my father was very badly abused, and he passed it along. Believe me, I didn't breathe a breath in my father's house without him telling me what a piece of crap I was. And he had a really dirty nickname for me. reference to the head of a glans. If you don't know what a glans is on a man, look it up. This is a family channel, but he used to call me glans head. Not exactly, but so in any case, sometimes the abuse would get really bad. And I remember one time he punched me in the face. I was like 11 or 13, and he punched me in the face, and he knocked me down the basement stairs and came down after me and stood over top of me and beat me with his fists like we were in a bar fight, almost unaliving me. And then, regular as clockwork, about a week later, 10 days later, he would not mention what he had done, but he would buy me something really expensive. One year it was a really beautiful stereo, and another year was a TV set, and in any case, so after he beat the ever-loving crap out of me this one time, he gave me a copy of his new book, and he said, "Here, son, a copy of my new book, and I autographed it for you." Wow. So in an obligatory way, I said thank you. I never called him dad or anything. Usually I said nothing or just thank you or called him sir. I never said dad or pop or anything like that. And then later on, I just called him by his name, Buck. So Buck gave me a copy of his new book. Wow. And he signed it. And I said, thank you. I'll put it with the others. So I went back to my room and threw it right in the trash without reading a word of it. Because when somebody has beaten the crap out of you and then they write poetry about how lovely the world is and all, the two just don't really go together. I'm sorry to say. And I'm not slandering the guy. I'm telling the truth. I mean, he's long gone by now, and I forgive him. I was with him as he passed away, telling him I loved him and everything was okay. And I really did by them, because he got born again when he was 77. He accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior. And it was very difficult being with him as he was passing, telling him I loved him and all that. Was very difficult, because he never ever said he was sorry for the truly perverted and mean crap that he did to me all throughout my childhood. You know, it was like my childhood was like that movie Clockwork Orange, you know. So in any case, the family he raised was like a spectrum. When you have abuse in a family, it's like shining light through a prism, and it makes this broad spectrum. I have two sisters that are ultra religious, two that were floozies, and two that were cold as ice, that if you were lying in a gutter, breathing your last, begging for help, they would just walk over top of you and leave you. And I get why. Because when I was 11, I was in the kitchen with my mother, And my sister, who had just become working age, I guess she would be like 17 or 18, maybe 19, I don't know. But in any case, she had just come of age and she was proud to bring some money home to help out. And she handed my mother a $20 bill. And my mother very dryly looked at her and said, "Well, what's this for?" And she said, "Well, rent," like that with a question mark. And my mother looked at the bill like it was a dried leaf and said, "Rent, huh?" And she gave me the $20 bill in front of my sister, disrespecting the uh, input, that my sister had very lovingly tried to help out with the bills. Now, back in 1968, $20 would have paid the phone bill. $20 would have paid the electric bill, would have paid like half the electric bill. So $20 was no small amount of money. $20 would be like $200 today. So my mother handed me the $20, and like any 11-year-old kid, I was like, ka-ching, and I snatched the money up. My sister was horrified, mortified, angry. You could see it changed her whole loving demeanor into a very mean-spirited, hateful, it ruined my sister. It ruined her. She was never the same after that. She was never the same. So CJ's in the house. It's just a hangout video, CJ. So my sister was never the same after that. And my mother turned and pivoted, walked out of the kitchen. And my sister, Ty Lopez, is in the house. What's up, Ty? And Ty, your handle always to me looks like tailpipe. I have to kind of focus on it for a while. It always looks like tailpipe. But in any case, my sister reached past me and got a very sharp knife out of the kitchen drawer and poked it into my belly and told me just one word, say one wrong word, and I'm going to gut you like a fish. And she wasn't kidding. She was not kidding. After that, she became one of the most violent people, people I'd ever known as a young girl. So I'm saying all this to get to a point. When there's abuse that's not addressed, it has that horrible consequence to it. So, fam, when you type in things you shouldn't type in, Hacker Tracker, the AI moderator, is going to take it out. So just letting you know, Hacker Tracker is turned on. So behave yourself. As Austin Powers would say, oh, behave. Oh, behave. So I'm standing there with the knife in my belly, and my sister's going to gut me like a fish. And years later, everybody went their way. And long story short, the one sister becomes a writer, And she just adores my father with her writing and everything. She's in like this fantasy land. She's in this fantasy land. So my older sister passed away last month, and I had reason to get in touch with the family about some idiocy that my brother was doing, trying to get the family to contact my brother and reason some sense into him. And in doing so, I told the one sister, in a matter of speaking, not quite this boldly, but that I didn't respect all the accolades and the adoration that they were heaping on my father, because the man that I knew was the man that would kick my ass at the drop of a hat, or do all sorts of nasty things like electrocute me 3 times and lift my shirt up to crush a cigarette out on my belly and that kind of thing. And what kind of kid, what kind of 10-year-old kid has got to tell their father, hey, look, that's not normal behavior to lift my shirt up and take a real big drag on your cigarette, get that sucker nice and orange and hot, and then lift my shirt up to crush it out on my belly like I'm your ashtray. So, all right. Dan Jareski's in the house from Romania. What's up, Dan? Strange Creature is in the house. So I got over it. Believe me, I have this mentality where I can put my mind in a place with the waterfall. You know, Bryson, I'm in the middle of one right now. I'm talking about having made the arrangements for the disposal of my body sometime in the future. I made the arrangements today. So in any case, I contacted the family, and in contacting the sister, the writer, I said, I don't jive with all of that stuff you're writing about our father, you know, adoringly and all of this other stuff, because that wasn't the reality, you know. Essentially, I told her, you're not in reality. The reality was very different. So, and I went on, I said, something happened in your childhood that you're not facing that made you a basket case, in a matter of speaking. So that freaked her out. And she said, don't ever call me again or talk to me or contact me. And she's going to move and change her phone number and get put on the national, you know, secret, what do they call that when they give a person a new identity? I mean, she went overboard, and I said, don't worry about it. I won't contact you again. But I instantly got put on the outs again with the family. So it made it easier and cheaper, because knowing that in the future, when my time comes, there's not going to be a funeral. There's not going to be anybody missing me or coming to the funeral. It meant that rather than spend $9,000 or $10,000 on a ceremony, I could spend $1,600 on a cardboard box and a cremation plan where they put you in a cardboard box and shove you in an oven, and then take take an air hose and blast the dust and the crumbs out of the oven for the next person. So that's what I opted for. And I got in touch with the people. And so all I have to do is make the payment. I have to scrape up $1,600 and pay the people, and then leave all the information with my executor so that when the time comes, I can be carted off in a cardboard box and put in an oven. I really wish, with all the videos I've made, who is that director that made that abysmal movie, Plan 9 from Outer Space? His name was like James Woods. Was it James Woods? Ed Wood, yeah. Ed Wood made that abysmal movie, Plan 9 from Outer Space. I think my life, the story of my life, would make this gloriously crappy B movie that would make Plan 9 from Outer Space look like an Oscar winner, you know? I really do. So I was thinking today about one of the most embarrassing moments that happened to me when I was a garbage collector. And garbage companies have 3 tiers of drivers. They don't talk to each other. You have the roll-off driver that drives the dump truck. They're considered top-tier truck driver. They hate to be called garbage men. Then you have the front-end driver with the truck with the forks that picks up the dumpster and showers itself with garbage and then puts the dumpster back on the ground. And then you had the rear load driver, aka flycatcher, that's in all the cartoons, of the hillbilly with the hat, with the hole in the hat, and the great big gloves that come up to here, and the suspenders, and the absolutely abysmal grammar and language, you know. That's the kind of truck I worked on when I was a kid. And then I got a shot at driving the roll-off truck when I was a little older. The roll-off truck had like a 10-foot long nose on it. It was called an auto car with a 7-speed Roan Ranger transmission, a really beautiful driving truck, okay? A really beautiful driving truck. But the problem was, when you pull the dumpster up on the truck, all of a sudden the top of the dumpster is 14 feet in the air. And you have to climb up on the side of the truck and put a tarp over the dumpster. Now, that's all well and good as long as the weather's good and it's not rainy or snowy or icy or windy. So I'm on top of this dumpster on top of the truck trying to put the tarp on the dumpster, and the wind catches the tarp like a sail. And I have 2 choices: fall into the garbage or fall off the truck and break my neck. So as I was going like that in the wind, I opted for falling forward into the garbage And what was in the garbage but a construction bucket? A construction bucket back then was when men worked on a construction site and all right, Marilyn Manson's in the house. A construction bucket was back then when they didn't have porta potties on construction sites. The men would pee and poop into a bucket and then put the bucket in the dumpster. So as I fell, I planted one foot in front of me right into the bucket of poop. I mean, right into the bucket of poop. So I got very annoyed and I decided to shake the bucket off my foot rather than get down with my hands and get my hands all poopy and everything. I decided, well, I'll just shake the bucket off my foot. But you know, a bucket has a handle. And so when I went to kick the bucket off my foot, the handle caught on my foot and sent the bucket flying back towards me. And I got splattered all down my face and the front of me with urine and poop. That was like 2 weeks of urine and 2 weeks of construction guy poop. So, yeah. Week old Spam and Dinty Moore, beef stew and all that other stuff went splattering up and down my visage, as it were. So I was upset. But being a garbage collector has all sorts of things that come with it. And yeah, I don't know how I got on that dead end. But in any case, I have to check something. The delivery guy always puts on a camouflage and puts on a green, cover to match the grass, and camouflage in the jungle outfit with grass on his head. And then he flops down on his belly and he crawls up to my door, pushing the package to very quietly leave it at the door for anyone in the neighborhood to walk past and steal, rather than just knock on the door and hand me the package. So I constantly have to keep an eye on the delivery notice, which sometimes the notice will come about 45 minutes after the package. So, yeah, welcome to Will's world. So that's the long and the short of it is my sister freaked out, and everybody in the family is older than God. I'm the youngest of the group. I'm the youngest, and my sister doesn't want me upsetting anybody and sending them off into an early eternity, even though all of us are septuagenarians and octogenarians. So, yeah, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. I'm in a wheelchair home 24/7, and they leave the package outside, which to me is not delivered. If you leave the package outside and you take a picture and the picture is of the package outside, you've just proven to me that you did not deliver my package. If you knock on the door and hand me the package and take a picture of me with the package, that's delivered. But no, I don't consider that legally delivered or otherwise. And it's so stupid because you call customer service, and you get this guy from India. My name, hello, thank you for calling the customer service. This is Tom. I'm like, yeah, right. Your name is Tom, and I'm Pope Francis. Please. How may I be helping you today with the customer service on this beautiful, lovely day? We hope that you're having a good, lovely life, and it's a lovely day. And at the end of the conversation, there will be a survey, and you will be telling them that I've been helpful. Please. All of this, they beg you to give them a 5-star rating before you even tell them what you want. Angie's in the house. So I'm like, look, for the 912th time, they delivered the package outside. They didn't knock on the door, and the package is not there now. Okay. I am being sorry to hear that, Mr. Vittler, and we will be sending you a replacement. Yeah, you're going to send me a replacement. Are they going to put the replacement out in the bushes? Or are they going to knock on my door with the replacement and hand it to me like they should have in the first time? I'm very sorry, Mr. Weir. We will be making this a priority delivery, and they will be knocking on the door and handing you the package as they should have the first time. And so invariably what happens is the delivery guy's like, well, this guy ratted me out and got me in trouble. So I'm going to bang on the door like a SWAT team and bam, 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 bam. And the door is flexing in the frame with each thunderous pound, and then it makes everybody else in the building uptight because they think maybe somebody's being evicted or a SWAT team has entered the building, or maybe it's a cartel or something like that. And it just gets everybody all stirred up. And you can hear the whole rest of the building with people slamming doors and that kind of stuff, irritated, instead of just doing things right. Nobody ever said the devil or the devil's world made sense, But in any case, like I said, I managed to get myself blocked by my family for my stringent opinion on people who abuse and then write crappy poetry, And I guess you considered it mean that I threw my father's books away, but it was good therapy. It was good therapy. Years ago when I was a kid, I was having trouble with vicious high blood pressure. I fainted when I was 14. I was at work, and it was stressful, and I was a newbie, and I had put the keys of this guy's car on the dashboard when I pulled it up at the gas station. For some reason, I put the keys on the dashboard, and the keys slid into the heater duct. It was a brand new 1971 Chevy Impala, and it was blocking the driveway and blocking the service bay. And they asked me for the keys to the car, and I did an I Love Lucy. I said, well, I left the keys in the car. If you all have lost them, and they put two and two together that I did, in fact, put the keys on the dashboard, and the keys to the car slid into the heater duct. So they had to take the whole dashboard and steering wheel and shifter and heater duct apart. I think that's why the mechanic quit. The mechanic quit shortly after I started working at this Esso station when I was a kid, because I did things like I pulled the car up and did an oil change on the car. Then I took it over to the mechanic's bay to have him tune it up. And I left the car running so Walt could pull it in without having to restart the car, without thinking that that made the engine hot. It made the engine blazing hot. So when he went to change the spark plugs, from a distance, I heard this, psh, oh, psh, oh, psh, oh, as he was burning his hands and profusely cussing with a tumultuous amount of alliteratives, and cursing the day I was ever born, cursing the boss for hiring me, cursing every breath that I took. So this guy came in this super sweet 1967 Mopar Super B. Oh boy. A Road Runner or a Super B. I think it was a Road Runner because it had the meep meep horn. Chrysler Road Runner. OMG. It had the 440 TMT motor with the shaker top and everything. And you started it up, and fire and hatred just came out of the exhaust pipe. Using like 12 gallons of gas just to start the car up. So I changed the oil, and back then they thought if you put 1040, that was your top oil. Now they know that that was not good because it didn't circulate well. The proper oil would have been 1030 or 5W30, circulated much better, more quickly. So I changed the oil and I put a new oil filter on the motor. And I learned a lesson. You should always take the oil filter and pour a half a quart of oil into the filter to prime it. That way the oil circulates immediately when you change your oil. Don't put a dry filter onto the motor. Take the filter, pour half a quart of oil into the filter, and you'll see it disappear because the paper filter is getting saturated with the oil. That's exactly what you want. But I didn't know that back then. So I put a dry filter on this motor and I started it up. Like that. So the oil light stayed on and the pressure didn't build up. So I went and the oil light stayed on and the pressure didn't build up. So I went and the motor went bang, tap, 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 tap. And the whole car shook. The whole car shook like it was in an earthquake. Bap, 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 bap. I had collapsed a lifter, and the rod was poking all around in the block, doing multiplicitous amounts of damage to this very expensive car. And see, even if they put a new motor, it would not have been a numbers matching car at that point. So by blowing the motor up, I devalued the car almost down to nothing. So it went from being a very expensive car to a piece of nothing. And then I had to go in and tell the boss, "Hey, Mr. Costello, you'll never guess what happened. I was changing the oil on the car and the motor blew up." I think that's why he had the heart attack while I was there. The poor man had a heart attack. His partner had a stroke, and the mechanic quit. Yeah. It was Soper's Esso, a little gas station on the corner of an island. And yeah, boss had a heart attack. His partner had a stroke, and the lead mechanic quit while I was there. So, and I don't say that in a funny way. Love God is in the house. Love God is a good handle. You should love God. But by the same token, out on the service island, I was a different animal. I filled people's tires up, put antifreeze in the radiator, put oil in the motor, brake fluid, power steering. I sold more on the island than I sold more in a day on the service island than they used to do in a week, simply by checking people's oil and topping it up properly. And then one day there was a man in a beautiful 1968 Mercury Cougar with a 428 V8 stuffed in the hood of this car. And he started it up. And instead of going into reverse, just as I walked in between the cars, he popped the clutch and the Mercury shot forward and smashed into the car in front violently. And when I looked back and saw the damage, I said, my legs would have been mush if I had walked in between those two cars. And after that, I lost my nerve. I could not walk between the cars if they were running. If they were running, I'd walk all the way around the cars. I would not walk in between two cars that were running. And believe me, it turned into be a problem. So I left the gas station and went to work for twice the money picking up garbage. But little did I know that it was from dark at night until dark in the morning till dark at night. So again, I think my life would make some wonderfully god-awful crappy B movie that Ed Wood would just be slathering over to direct. Oh boy. But in order to recap, I started making arrangements for my burial today. Making arrangements for my cremation, rather. No funeral, no visitation from anybody, because nobody really cares. And $1,600 is the cheapest price I've found to be put in a cardboard box and rammed into an oven and turned into powder. So, but in any case, like I said, my sister, the reason I called my sister in part was my sister said when she would be laid to rest, she wanted to have me in a little box, holding me in a little box and buried with me in a little box in her coffin. And I told her, I said, well, we can't get together. We can't get along for 5 minutes without arguing. So why would I want to spend eternity in a little box with you holding me? But little did I know that that turned out to be quite prophetic, because she has indeed asked that I not contact her anymore and leave the rest of the family alone because they're too old and frail, and I might wipe out the whole family with an errant comment about crappy poetry written by an abuser and those that idolize that abuser and want to ensure his legacy. And like I said, I forgave my father. He never asked for forgiveness for what he did to me, but I forgave him. And I was a good son. I was right there as he was passing away, telling him I loved him and all of that other stuff. He was a good provider. He was a good provider. But like one Christmas, 1967 or 68, they had a Mercury Cougar XR7 with this real cool grill. And Magnavox Stereo came out with a Magnavox 400 with the same cool grill. It was a record player. Very expensive, very high end. You put the record on and put the little holder on it. You clicked it, and the tone arm came up and looked at you for a second. Then it backed off, thinking about what to do. It came up and it touched the record like that. Then it backed off again, and the record dropped, and then it would go over and play the record. It's very fascinating to watch. And when the mechanism broke after a couple weeks, it was impossibly expensive to fix. So it never had the automatic thing after that. I think my brother may have cursed it because my father had done something really crappy to me, and he bought me the expensive stereo. It was always his way of saying he was sorry. And so I opened up this incredibly expensive gift in front of everybody else. It was an embarrassment. It was so expensive. Probably a whole week's pay for my father back then. And so my brother opens up his present, and he got a carton of cigarettes and this crappy $35 General Electric record player in this beat up gunmetal gray case with a crappy sound to it. You put the record on and the thing would go whoop, as it warmed up, whoop, and it would hum. And my brother kind of looked at his gift and looked at mine, Now, I wish to God back then I had the maturity to tell my parents to take my gift back and get their money, or to put it in the rec room so the whole family could enjoy it. But needless to say, I wasn't that mature, and it caused a rift between my brother and I that I regret to this day, 60 years later. 60 years. So, yeah. So even Christmas got spoiled. And boy, my one sister was always on me. She was like, well, Will, they had an earthquake in Ecuador, and I know it's your fault. They had an earthquake in Ecuador, and that's your fault, Billy. She always said my name with such vitriol. Well, Billy, they had a solar flare, and it knocked out the communication on half the earth. What have you got to say for yourself, Billy? She always got out the finger. Billy. When I was a kid, I wanted to grab that finger and bite it, when she gave me the finger. But really, for me, it was survival, getting along, stacking cash for the inevitable day that I knew I would get kicked out of the house, because my father kicked my brother out when he was 17. He didn't wait that long for me. He kicked me out at 15. And young people, I made one big life-ruining mistake. I could have gone next door and asked my neighbor to rent her basement. I had plenty of cash on me. I had $600 on me. And I had a car that I couldn't legally drive. And the keys were up on the mantle, and the car was parked out front. So later on, after getting kicked out, I came back and recovered my car. Came back and got my car. And I drove this enormous garbage truck with the forks on it, with no license. Nobody ever asked me if I had a truck driver's license. I had a learner's permit from high school from Mr. Nicky, who was the corniest. He was the corniest teacher. He had these expressions. Don't drive like they do in Moscow and be Russian. You shouldn't be Russian when you drive. He was the dearest, most corny teacher. And the high school had these old electronic cars from 1950. And you got in the electric car and you watched a movie, and the movie showed traffic situations, and you had to blow the horn or turn on your signal or steer the steering wheel or step on the brake in time to the movie. And the thing monitored each car that each student was in. Well, the system was old. The system was 20 some years old by the time I took driver's ed in high school. And one kid stepped on the brake and like the car shorted out and almost electrocuted the little girl. So we got our cars from the local Chevy dealership. And back then, a 1971 Impala was a huge car. It was bigger than a Cadillac would be today. And I'm in the car just waiting for my turn. And this little girl is driving, and Mr. Nicky tells her to pull off into traffic, and she takes her foot and just stomps on the gas, and spins the right tire in the gravel. I mean, just decimated the car. And the motor goes bam, tap, 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 tap. She over revved the motor on this brand new car. The car hadn't even been broken in, didn't have 500 miles on it, had like 354 miles on this brand new Impala. And the girl spins it in the gravel, just tearing up the paint and everything on the back of the car, and blows the motor. So the Chevy dealership had to send a tow truck. And of course, they didn't like that we had spoiled their donated cars. So that was the end of that. And I went from being a garbo on a garbage truck to driving one of those great big behemoths with the forks. And so it got found out that I had no license along with this other boy, and we're driving these trucks. And so the local MVA told us to report and take a driver's lesson. Okay. So we drive up to the MVA with no license, and we're parking the trucks, and the sheriff comes up. How did you get the truck here? Well, we drove. Duh. Well, you don't have a license to drive the truck. You don't know you could be arrested right now? Call your boss. So the boss comes and gives the guy a handshake. Hey, baby, it's all right. A handshake. I'm not going to go into it, but that settled things with the cop. And so, in any case, the cops drew straws on who was going to go with me during the driver's test. And long story short, I always put the garbage clean out shovel on the right side on the seat. And the seat had oil and garbage and hair and gravel, all of this stuff on the seat. And it hadn't occurred to me to clean the seat before letting the officer hop up into the truck and go with me on the driver's test. So this old guy, 60-some-year-old sheriff, gets in, and he turns to me and he goes, drive, boy. Drive, boy. And I take off down Goody Drive, make a right turn onto 28, and I go across a bridge that's no trucks on Veers Mill Road. They had this old suspension bridge, and there was no trucks. You were supposed to take the bypass. Well, I drove the truck over the bridge, hugging the curb. The tire was rubbing the curb, and it was making the truck bounce. And the cop looks really annoyed. And then there was a train overpass off to the right. There was no trucks. And so I made a right turn and went under the train overpass that was no trucks on my way through this neighborhood that was no trucks back to the DMV. And the officer gave me 8 points off because the truck was leaking oil. And in any case, when he got out, the other cops were howling at him, laughing. They said, the kid scared you so bad you crapped yourself. And when he turned around and looked at his butt, his tan uniform was absolutely decimated with oil and garbage and hair and rocks and gravel. And all of this rubbed into his butt from the seat of the garbage truck. And I said, officer, I'll pay for a new uniform. I'll get it dry cleaned, whatever you want. And he goes like this, get out, get out, get out of here. I never want to see you again. I don't want to see you for the rest of my life, which wasn't very long because he had a heart attack after that. He was like my third heart attack victim of somebody that I'd pissed off and had a heart attack. I didn't do it on purpose, But in any case, he goes, get out, get out, get out of here. And the other cops are just laughing at him, the poor man. But I got my license surreptitiously, as it were, a valid license. And I went on to back into mailboxes and dump garbage onto cars and dump paint onto cars as I lifted the dumpster up from the paint store. It showered this brand new black Lincoln Continental in paint from the Duron paint store. And the guy came out and he had a brand new shiny black Lincoln Continental just covered in pink and white and brown paint. And I got the brilliant idea to use a sign from the company to try and wipe the paint off of the Lincoln. And so I'm using a dumpster sticker to try and wipe the paint off before it dries. And of course it sets up. And now the guy's got a brand new black Lincoln Continental with white and pink paint and the dumpster sticker from my company. So it's quite obvious who was responsible. No getting away with that one. That was my childhood. Anyway, fam, I have got to go. I've got to fight off an optical migraine when they come on. It looks like I'm looking through a piece of broken glass. So, in any case, it was a big day for me making the final arrangements for the disposal of my behemoth body when the time comes. PopPop out.